Welcome to Take a Deep Breath. I'm your host, Mike Maher, and today I bring you a true meditation expert. Breathwork and meditation sometimes seem to be very separate, but really they're very aligned, and I can't wait to share with you today the evidence-based information from Ariel Garten. Expect to learn in this podcast what is meditation from a scientific perspective? How the work that Ariel's been doing with her company with NASA and first responders can relate to what you and I do on a daily basis, and how she's been able to help people get deeper sleep. So not just more sleep, but more of the so coveted deep sleep, how we can actually extend and get more of that. I'm also going to understand in this podcast things about being body led and what it means to be truly embodied and all the benefits of what meditation get to bring. So I cannot wait to get stuck in with this show. So let's just begin. Here is Ariel Garten from Muse. Cheers. So if we start off with, I guess I would love to know, what drew you personally towards meditation?
So I was studying neuroscience at the time. So I was very aware of the amazing positive impacts that meditation makes on the brain. And then I worked as a psychotherapist for a decade, and I'd be trying to get my patients to meditate because we are taught that when somebody comes in with anxiety, depression, uh, difficulty managing their emotions, you tell them to meditate. However, I, as a psychotherapist, sucked at meditation. I'd be trying to get my patients to do it, and they couldn't do it, and I couldn't do it. And so that really began the journey of building Muse, a tool to help them meditate. But I was drawn to it because the benefits of it I was so well versed in. I desperately wanted to do this thing and make my own brain better with it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. What do you think was some of the blockers or reasons why people found it so hard to meditate, or why you found it so hard to meditate?
So I am an overachieving A type. The idea of shutting off my brain seemed really scary or impossible. And I would sit down to meditate and I'd have a million thoughts pummeling through my head. And being an A type, you want to do everything really well. And so when you when it's not working and those thoughts keep coming, you're like, wow, I suck at this. So I would just like get up and stop meditating. In fact, I would never even start. So it made it feel like something that I was supposed to do that was, going to lead me to some sort of enlightened being. Yet it seemed so impossible when I actually sat down to do it.
Mm. And I don't think I've ever asked this before, but could you give us some of the neuroscience definitions of what is meditation? Like, what is it? What's going on in the brain?
Sure. So meditation has several different connotations to it. On the one hand, you have a spiritual practice where meditation is leading to an increase in consciousness or an expansion of spirituality. On the other hand, and this is the definition that many of us take in, Western culture, meditation is a practice or a training to train your brain and to train your brain to healthy and positive mind states. So, meditation is a thing that you do regularly, a practice that trains your brain in order to improve your brain and your mind. Now, some people also wonder, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is the property that arises from the practice of meditation. So, as we sit there, focusing our attention on our breath or observing our thoughts, we are training the ability to become more mindful, to become more aware of our present moment thoughts, feelings, interactions with the world, sensations, etc. And it turns out when you do this practice of meditation, it actually makes real change in your brain.
Very cool. And if somebody is just dialing in for the first time, they've not heard about meditation, like what would be some of the kind of standout benefits of, like, what if you say, well, why bother meditating? What's that going to give me? Like, what are some of the key things that you've noticed and your clients and customers have noticed?
So I can tell you all the things that research says meditation does, because
Mhm.
there's now over 10,000 published studies cataloging the benefits of meditation in the mind, in the body, and in our life. So, through meditation, some of the things you may notice early on are a decrease in the sensation of chatter in your mind. So, that sensation that we have of like, there's just this dialogue running in our head and it's driving me crazy, um, that starts to go away. You find yourself less stressed and more calm. People report better sleep, improved productivity, better relationships, and decreased reactivity. So when things happen in your life, you're less reactive, you create less drama around it. And then you also see the benefits in your workday because you're more able to focus, be attentive, and manage your schedule and your mind. So, meditation has benefits that range throughout our body and our life. When you look really closely about what's happening in the brain during meditation, you see benefits like increased volume of your prefrontal cortex, decreased aging of the brain, and when you look into the body, you see things like reduced inflammation. You see maintenance of the length of your telomeres, which relates to longevity. So, meditation, this very simple activity, has a host of phenomenal benefits in our brain, our body, and our lives.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, who wrote The 4 Hour Work Week, and he has a term coined called the minimum effective dose, which I love. So, what would the minimum, to get some of these benefits, what would be the minimum effective dose somebody would need to practice? And I know it's going to vary person to person, but what would that be? And like, how long would it be before you started to notice some of those benefits?
So, in standard studies, they look at 20 minutes per day of meditation. But in the studies that were done with Muse, and Muse has been studied by the Mayo Clinic, by NASA, by all sorts of people. In the studies done with Muse, they look at simply 5 minutes per day of meditation having these benefits. So, in one study done with doctors at the Mayo Clinic who are in the emergency room, super stressed out people, they used Muse for only 5 minutes per day on average. And over 6 weeks, they saw a 54% decrease in burnout, an improvement in cognition, a decrease in stress, of course, and an improvement in their sleep. So, what you start to notice over the first week or two is your mind just seems calmer. And then over the next few weeks, you start to realize that you have more control over your mental space and your reactions. And by week 6, you are in a place where you've seen significant improvements in your life.
Yeah, oh, wow. Well, I always call myself a serial failure of meditation. So when you were telling your story at the start, I was like, well, that's me. Like I do breath work and I like breath work because it gives me my brain something to kind of focus on. But I do sometimes struggle with the doing nothing, type A, go, 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 all that sort of stuff. So I guess I'm curious to know like how does using the Muse help somebody like me or like what you do? Like what's going on with the Muse? Like how is that helping you become a better meditator? Like what does it do?
Sure. So Muse device, and I actually have two of them here for anybody watching the video. These are the Muse devices. It's a clinical grade EEG. There are sensors on the forehead and behind the ears, and it actually tracks your brain while you meditate. So you put on the Muse device, it tracks your brainwave activity, and it's able to know when you're in focused attention, when you're meditating, and when your mind is wandering. And then it translates your meditation state into guiding sounds so that when your mind is wandering off into thoughts, you hear it as stormy. And as you actually come towards focused attention on your breath, it quiets the storm. And when you really stay focused in your meditation state, you hear little birds chirping. So it's giving you real time feedback to know what's going on in your brain. So it's kind of like having a little coach or guru there, actually tracking your progress and encouraging you and reinforcing you when you're doing it right. And after the fact, you see scores, you see graphs and stats, things that actually show you what your brain, your heart, your body were doing during your meditation. And so it makes it incredibly tangible. It takes this like weird process of like, what am I supposed to be doing? I'm just sitting here with my mind wandering. It takes that weird, like indefined process and actually makes it clear and actionable with real data from your brain.
Mm. And so the nuts and bolts then of meditation, what are we trying? Because I hear so many different versions, and it becomes an overwhelm in itself. Some people say clear the mind, others say let the thoughts kind of go by like clouds. Somebody else say maybe focus on the breath. There might be another one where it's counting or feeling your heartbeat. So like what are we doing when we're musing and meditating? Like what are we doing with our mind? just pause in the podcast for 2 ticks. So if you like what you've heard so far and you're thinking, oh, I'd like to give this Muse a go, then we have an amazing offer going with Muse right now. You can go to the website, which will be down below, which is choosemuse.com/TADB. choosemuse.com/TADB, and that will give you a 15% offer code. So you can actually get hold of one of these muses. So go on the website, check it out. They'll explain way more about what's going on with them. And I've been using them. I used my first Muse probably about 7 or 8 years ago. So it's not a flash in the pan thing here. These are here to stay. Very, very powerful. And as you can hear from the podcast, they can absolutely change your life. Very, very cool. So it's choosemuse.com/TADB. Let's get back on with the podcast. Cheers.
Okay, so all of the things you just described, those are all correct instructions for the same thing, for focused attention meditation practice. So in a basic meditation practice, you're putting your attention on your breath. It could be your breath or it could be your heart. You can count your breaths as a way to maintain your attention. And eventually, as you're trying to attend to your breath, you're going to have a thought that wanders in. And then it's your job to say, I don't want to follow that thought. It's okay. I'm just going to come back to my breath. So this thing that we hear, like, just let the thoughts go. So when a thought comes, I'm focusing on my breath. A thought comes of Facebook, grocery store. Instead of actually grabbing that thought and thinking it, I just let it go by and I put my attention back onto my breath. And it's a very simple process. It is going to be a little bit challenging at times, but that's okay. And know that the fact that you have thoughts is fine. You don't need your mind to go completely blank. None of our minds ever do. What you want to have happen is to be able to observe thoughts coming in and to choose not to follow them. To just say, yep, that's a thought, back to my breath. Yep, that's a thought, back to my breath. And as you do this very simple thing, some very amazing transformations begin to happen. So number one, you're not thinking your thoughts anymore. Most of us just go through life with thoughts going through our heads. We're just in this like stream of thinking. And as soon as you can have a thought come in and not follow it and say, nope, don't want you, back to my breath, you fundamentally shifted your relationship to your thoughts. And rather than just being at the mercy of whatever garbage your mind gives you, you now have the option and the choice to curate the contents of your own mind. And when you do this, those thoughts that are stressful, annoying, repetitive are things that you now can have control over, that you don't need to think. And so you start to curate your thoughts. At the same point, you start to shift your relationship to your emotions, because emotions have had the same experience. The emotion comes up. You can either be taken by it and ride the train, or you can simply observe, that's an emotion, it comes up, and then I can let that one go too.
And you mentioned the breath, and so I'd love to just explore that a little bit with you as well. So, are you talking about an awareness and just watching the breath? And do you have any experience or anything you can talk about when it comes to actually changing the breath when it comes to meditation? So, if you could just dig into that a little bit, that'd be quite interesting.
Sure. So in a classic focused attention meditation practice, you are training your skill of mindfulness, which means that you're observing. So I'm simply observing what's happening with my breath. I'm just breathing. I'm not trying to change it. I'm not trying to do anything with it. I'm just being with the sensation in my body. And then a thought arises and don't follow it. I come back to the sensation of my body. And the act of being with your physical sensation actually starts to change your brain. So it starts to downregulate your default mode network, the part of your brain that starts to think and ruminate, and upregulates activity of the insula, the part of the brain that is associated with somatic sensation. And there's actually fascinating research that shows that people who move their attention to their body rather than their thoughts have decreased amounts of depression, for example. That's the work of Dr. Norm Farb, a colleague of mine. So I know a lot of you, this is a breathwork channel. You think about breath work, and in breath work, you're actively changing your breath intentionally. Here, you are choosing instead to simply be with it. There are other meditation practices in which you can start to shift or elongate your breath. And in many of the breathwork practices you do, you are meditating, but perhaps with a different intention to it. In the breathwork practice, you're going through a breathwork protocol, and it's with the goal of, doing this breathwork protocol and having the physiological experiences and the psychological experiences that come from that. That is a form of meditation. So recognize that you are meditating. And once you put it into the context of shifting your relationship to your thinking and getting yourself out of your head and into your body, um, and down regulating the thoughts that come, you might recognize even additional benefits that start coming from your deep breathwork focused meditation practices.
Mm. That's interesting. One of the things we actually teach clients on the first session is actually breath awareness. And we always say, before we start to change the breath, let's notice where it's at. So it's really interesting. That's the form of the meditation as well. Before we start to mess with the mechanics of breathing, we go there. Um, I would love to just explore a little bit about the somatic process a little bit more, if you don't mind, because there is watching the breath, but there is a modality we teach where we allow the strongest feeling to come up. And for some people, that might just be the feet touching the floor, or it might be they've got some tightness in the chest, or they've got an ache in their shoulder, or they feel love behind their eyes. And so there's this body led meditation we do, where all these different things pop up and we're just following it. So I don't know if you could talk a bit about. I mean, you just mentioned your colleague there as well. So watching the breath versus other body-led stimuli, like is there any difference in terms of meditation doing those two things, or do they all get back to the same result?
So, in general, they point back to the same result. And that result is a dropping into the body and out of the mind. So there's a lot of different shifts that happen when we drop into the body. Many of us avoid our body and our bodily sensations because they're uncomfortable. And so when we are able to shift into and be with a pain in our shoulder and recognize that we don't need to change it, we don't need to fix it, we can simply be with it, there's an incredible release that comes from that. A release of the tension that we hold when we try to fight against sensations and experience in our bodies, or when we try to suppress those sensations and experiences. And so in meditation, we talk a lot about an allowing and an equanimity. Equanimity is the act of being with something without being overly excited or overly upset. It's the act of just being. And that leads to a great acceptance. So when you practice equanimity with the sensations in your body, yes, I have a sensation in my shoulder that's I would have previously described as painful. I can just be with it here. It is sensation. It's neither good nor bad. It just is. And when we experience something just on the level of sensation and we don't bring in our mental process to describe it and create stories around it, then we reduce the drama in our life. So, pain has two aspects to it. There's the primary pain, which is the physical sensation that we feel on the site. And then there's secondary pain, which is the stories and the narratives that we create around that pain. Oh no, that hurts. I won't be able to go to school or do my work. I don't want to step on it. It's going to hurt more. All of that generates anxiety, tension, frustration, and stress. And it turns out that when you scientifically look at these two pieces, primary pain and secondary pain, primary pain comprises a small amount of the pain, and secondary pain comprises up to 90% of the discomfort that comes from the pain. Our desire to avoid it, to create narratives around it, to feel depressed about it, to imagine what it's going to mean for us in the future when we have this pain and we can't do all these things. And so when you apply, for example, a mindfulness practice to pain sensation and you just sit with the pain and you let go of all the narratives and the drama and the stories around it, you're like, okay, it's just pain. It's just sensation. It just is. And as we practice this in relation to our bodies, and we can learn that something can happen and fine, it just is, I can just accept it, we can then take that same concept into our life. And when things that are challenging happen to us, um, you fall ill, you do things that are problematic. Your kid breaks something. Rather than creating all the drama and narratives around that make it so much harder for us to deal with and bear because we've created all these stories about how awful it's going to be. If you strip all of that away and you just sit with the simple act, okay, the vase broke, I'm going to clean it up, I'm done. Okay, I'm sick. That's today. Tomorrow's going to be different. Um, all of a sudden, our life becomes much less burdensome. And you're existing in, what really feels like a truly evolved place, a place where you're just taking the world moment by moment, day by day, not creating drama and just easily dealing with what is.
That sounds lovely. That sounds really nice. So I've got a 3-year-old downstairs, obsessed with space, and so we've got to talk a little bit about NASA if we can. So what did Muse do with NASA? Can you share anything about what was going on there? Because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so NASA's done several things with Muse. One, Muses went into the NASA Mars simulation environment in Hawaii. So they generated a simulated Mars, and then they used Muses to track the brain states of the astronauts going through simulated experiences of living on Mars, getting to Mars, managing Mars, and both the stress as well as the cognitive function changes that are related to that. Then I know there are two different groups in NASA. One is a performance group that have Muse devices. They've variously written to me with questions, but I have no idea what they're doing, and they haven't told me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I just all things space is just yeah, it's just really hot in this house at the minute. Okay. They're very nice. And is there anything you can share, like what they learned from doing Muse for Mars? Did it has it helped now, or was that kind of classified information they can't share?
So there was a paper that was written from it, and it demonstrated that they're able to characterize the states of the cognitive functioning of the astronauts, being able to look at when they were attending, what their cognitive load was. So Muse has been used both as a meditation tool that we're describing. It's also been used by, actually, at the moment as we speak, it's being used by hundreds of neuroscientists around the world to do real neuroscience research. And then it's also used as a tool to track sleep as effectively as a sleep lab. So there have been over 200 papers published using Muse.
That's very cool. So you just mentioned sleep, and that is one of the most common things that people reach out for through the channel, and when we're doing coaching, is that their sleep is just in the toilet, and they're just not getting deep, restful sleep. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about how is Muse affecting sleep, and give us a little bit of behind the hood, like well, how does that make sleep better? Like what's going on there?
Sure. So we've talked a lot about how Muse can help you meditate. Muse is actually a whole brain health platform. So meditation is just one of the exercises inside of Muse. We also have tools to help you sleep, tools to help you track your cognitive function, tools to help you track the oxygenation of your prefrontal cortex. We can get into all of that later. So diving right into sleep, um, we are able to track sleep as effectively as a sleep lab. So this device that I have here. This is the Muse S Athena. It's a very comfortable softband headband, and it contains the same kinds of technology that you get in a sleep lab. EEG to track your brain activity, and then it has optical sensors to track your heart rate and your SpO2. And so it's actually used by scientists as a real sleep lab. And as a consumer, you can also access this amazing technology. You put the Muse on before you go to sleep, and Muse is actually tracking your brain state as you move from wakefulness to sleep and can actually bring in something that we call the digital sleeping pill to help you fall asleep faster and then fall back asleep in the night. It's super amazing. So, in the same way that we are tracking your brain while you meditate, knowing when you're focused and when your mind has wandered, Muse is able to track your stages of sleep from wakefulness as you start to move into N1, the first stage of sleep, and it can adjust the audio that you're listening to. So you might put on a sleep story, a podcast, some guidance, and as you're listening to this, Muse is detecting your state of wakefulness and starting to adjust the audio in a way that actually encourages your brain to fall asleep. And then once you are fast asleep, it turns it off. And then when you wear the Muse throughout the night, if you wake up again, the Muse automatically brings back in the same experience that helped you fall asleep the first time, which has now become a sleep cue for you to help you fall back asleep. And it really works. Studies have demonstrated that Muse decreases your latency to sleep onset. in simple language, the amount of time it takes you to fall asleep, can decrease that by up to 55% and improves overall sleep quality by over 20%. So it has made a massive difference in people's lives who have difficulty sleeping.
Wow. And again, how long does that take? If we put that on right now, would you notice the benefits in one session, or is there like a compounding effect that takes time to build up with something like that?
Yeah, so for most people, it takes 2 or 3 days to sort of become used to the experience of the audio changing as you fall asleep. But
Mm.
once you do, it's amazing. So, we have users that have used it night after night for like a year on end, and people who just absolutely love it. And they're like, this is a game changer. It's like changed my ability to fall asleep. And then you can use the meditation features of Muse throughout the day to train your brain to become more calm in general. Because most of us, as we're falling asleep, what we say is, oh, my mind is racing, my mind is racing, I can't shut it off. And so, focused attention meditation is the thing that teaches you to shut off your brain so it's not, racing before you fall asleep. And then the additional features of Muse really add extra layers to make sure that you fall asleep and fall back asleep. And then we have a super cool feature about to come out. It's called deep sleep stimulation. So we're working with several labs in Canada, the US, and Spain, and we've been working with them to create a deep sleep stimulation paradigm to use with older adults with mild cognitive impairment. These labs reached out to us to build this with them because they wanted to study older adults with cognitive impairment, and to see if they enhanced their deep sleep, if it would improve their cognitive function. So we actually built this incredible tool that stimulates the delta waves. You get your delta waves during your deepest sleep. So with gentle audio stimulation, it stimulates your delta waves, deepening your deep sleep. And we were able to take that work that we are doing in the lab and actually deliver it to all of our consumers. So starting in January, you'll be able to not only fall asleep and fall back asleep, but also deepen your deep sleep with this incredibly cool technology with Muse.
Oh, wow. And when you say deepen, do you mean lengthen the amount of time you're in deep sleep, or are you talking about actually the quality of the deep sleep is changing as well?
Both. So in deep sleep, you have delta rhythms. So delta is your slowest wave of sleep. It's these beautiful, beautiful slow waves that really dominate your whole head. And it's in that deep, slow wave sleep that our brain becomes most effectively restored, that we're able to move toxins out, that our brain's able to communicate in disparate ways with one another, and really restore. But as you age and with various circumstances, the depth of your delta waves, the amount of your brain that's in delta decreases over time. So what the deep sleep stimulation does is it provides a little audio cue right at the beginning of the delta wave that increases it. So think about, waves in an ocean or waves in a pool. If you drop a pebble in, they'll have waves. If you drop a big pebble, your waves will be bigger. So we're basically dropping pebbles right when the waves are coming up in order to enhance them. And it causes an effect that both deepens your deep sleep, enhances your delta waves, and if your delta waves would have just sort of trailed off, because it's had this deepening effect, it often creates a longer train of delta waves, also lengthening your deep sleep. So
Mm.
it's a incredible, incredible technology, and it's like really an honor that we can bring it out to everyone.
That's really cool. I have one of the Ring trackers, and I've always been shocked at how bad my deep sleep is. Like, I'm lucky if I get about fifty minutes of deep sleep on that ring. So I don't know how accurate they are. I know they're not super accurate, but do you have any guidelines or suggestions, like what would be a good amount of deep sleep a middle-aged person should be looking to get?
Sure. So first off, one of the things that ring and wrist trackers are worst at is deep sleep. They're
Mm.
looking at your heart rate or your movement, both of which are just sort of poor shadows of like what's actually going on. The only way to see when you're in deep sleep is by looking at the brain. So don't despair. It may not be correct if it's, a reading taken from the finger or the wrist. What the ideal deep sleep looks like, or the ideal night sleep, is you fall asleep and the first half of your sleep is dominated by deep sleep. So in the first 4 hours, about two, or if you're really lucky, 2.5 of those hours is deep sleep. And then the second half of your night is dominated by REM sleep. So in the second half of the night, you're looking at 2 to 3 hours of REM sleep if you're actually getting a full 8-hour cycle. And throughout the night, you go in and out. You cycle probably 4 to 6 times through wakefulness, light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. Wakefulness, light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. So momentary awakenings are totally okay and totally expected, especially when you're in the second half of your sleep, in your REM sleep. That's when we are meant to pop awake for a moment, make sure everything's okay, and then go back into our dreams. Um, but you want to really keep those awakenings as short as possible and to a minimum to really have an effective good night's sleep.
Yeah, okay, very cool. So I won't lose too much despair 'cause I'm like, "What am I doing wrong to get this bloody deep sleep to go up?" And, we take turns putting my son to sleep, and what happens is you get really groggy because 'cause you're in the dark for a couple of hours trying to get him to sleep, and then what happens is you kind of drift off, and then I notice that I'm dropping into deep sleep, and then you wake up again, and it's like robbed your deep sleep a little bit. Anyway, that's what the ring's telling me. I'm looking forward to testing the Muse. Um,
So I have a couple recommendations for
oh,
people
yes,
to improve
please.
their
Yeah.
sleep. Yes. So, and I know that feeling because I have 2 kids and like I'll crawl into bed with my son and it's, 8 p.m. and I'm feeling so sleepy because I'm putting them to bed.
Yep.
And so what you wanna do is capitalize on that sleepy feeling by keeping your lights dim. So even if you need to be awake and do something, keep your lights dim,
Mhm.
capitalize on the sleep. Don't just hop onto your computer and throw lights in your eyes because then you're gonna pop into your wakefulness. And do try to avoid actually falling asleep in that moment. You wanna just tiptoe out before you fall asleep.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I did try that the other day because I was like, right, this is going to be a mental challenge now. I cannot fall asleep with him, and it's like sometimes an hour and a half what we're trying to get him to bed. But I was like, I won't do it. But no, thank you. That's really really helpful. So, can you talk a bit about mental fitness and why that's so important to longevity?
Sure. So we've talked about meditation, we've talked about sleep, and those two are an aspect of mental fitness. We all know what it means to be physically fit, to go to the gym, to do exercises, to have a body that feels good and capable. And we know that we can train our physical fitness. You can also train your mental fitness. So, your mental fitness is your ability for your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions to be strong and work for you. And most of us don't train it. We just sort of, as I said, go through life with these thoughts in our head, these thoughts dominating our mental space. And they tend to make us feel kind of unhappy at times, frustrated, self loathing. They tend to be repetitive and stressful. We tend to have a fight with our partner and just think about it and ruminate it and ego defend. And it turns out that you can change that by working on your mental fitness. And you can change that by doing exercises like meditation and brain training. You can improve it by sleeping. So, when you don't sleep well, your mental fitness and your emotional self regulation get much worse. Like in the same way that if your little kid misses his nap or he's approaching his nap, he's whiny and crying and miserable. Um, Adults are the same. We just hide it better. We just have prefrontal cortices that sort of keep us in check. And so, if we don't sleep, our mental fitness degrades, not just our cognitive function. And so you want to actively think about and work on your mental fitness so that in the same way your body is strong, your mind and your mental capacity is strong as well.
How would one measure their mental fitness? Like, what would be an indicator of that?
So there are surveys that indicate your mental fitness. So there's things
Hmm.
like the GAD-7, the PHQ-9. They look at your levels of anxiety or
Hmm.
depression. Um, and those will show something in the cases where you are anxious or depressed, where you have something more clinical going on. In general, you want to be measuring your mental fitness through self reflection. How am I feeling today? Um, is there an ability to create improvement in my thoughts and my feelings? You want to be measuring it with tools like Muse, where we have measures for your cognitive function. We have measures for your meditation. So you actually see how your meditation practice is improving day after day and how your levels of focus and calm are improving session after session. And so that's one way to actually track the impact of these exercises on your mental fitness.
Okay. You mentioned something earlier about the oxygen to the prefrontal cortex. Can you talk about that? Because that sounds quite interesting. What's going on there?
Yeah, so in the new Muse Athena, it's super exciting. So this is the only device to have two different technologies in it: EEG, which measures your brain waves, and FNIRS, frontal near infrared spectroscopy, and that is measuring the blood flow to your brain. So for those watching the video, it's actually just these little sensors here. Now, you might have heard of fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, when you go into an MRI machine and they say, okay, think about something or do something. They try to trigger the action of a portion of your brain. What they're looking at is the oxygen consumption in that part of your brain. They're saying, okay, do some math, and they're seeing your prefrontal cortex light up because it's consuming oxygen. This little technology packed into the Muse here is able to do something very similar. So using red and infrared light, it's able to sample the oxygen right at the blood-brain barrier of your prefrontal cortex. So it's looking at the amount of oxygen that's being delivered to your brain and the amount of oxygen that's being consumed by your brain because you're using it. So just like our muscles, when you work them out, they need more nutrients and more oxygen delivered to them. The same with your brain. Oxygen is the sort of currency of your brain's energy. You need oxygen in order to create energy in order for your brain to work. So when we're looking at the oxygen delivery of your brain, you're looking at the amount of energy that is available for your brain to use. And when we're looking at the amount that's been consumed, we're seeing how much did your brain work because it consumed all that oxygen. And so we're able to both measure the oxygen delivery to your prefrontal cortex as well as train it. So we have a neurofeedback exercise that actually trains your brain, your prefrontal cortex, to demand more oxygen and upregulate its function. It is incredibly cool.
That is cool. Can you give us anything under the hood? Like, what is going on there? How are you training your brain to give more oxygen? Like, what is that? Because that feels like very interesting indeed.
Totally. So when you do an exercise that engages your prefrontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that's responsible for thinking, for planning, for attention, for inhibition. So when you do something that engages any of those aspects of your cognition, you're asking your prefrontal cortex to do some work. And so in this exercise that we have, there's an owl that's flying. And as you're able to demand more oxygen to your prefrontal cortex, the owl flies faster. And what that practically looks like is you're staring at the owl and you're trying to figure out how to make it move. And you can do mental math. So you can count backwards by threes or do something that's going to be challenging. And as you do that, a few seconds later, you start to see the owl's wings flapping. You start to see it moving in the app. And that's because your brain has demanded or asked for more oxygen because you're doing this task. And then you keep doing tasks that demand your prefrontal cortex, and the owl flies faster and faster. And it's a form of neurofeedback, which in fact is training your brain to have more blood and oxygen delivered to it, thereby being able to strengthen its function.
Yeah. Oh wow. So, and I'm guessing, and please tell me here, is there some sort of like afterburn effect to that? So not only when you're doing those brain training tasks, are we seeing then like there is more blood flowing to the brain after we've done those tasks as well, or is it mainly when you're doing the tasks you'll get that extra blood flow?
So over time, you are training your brain to demand more blood flow more often. So it's kind of like, you're waking up the part of your brain that may not be used that much. And then once you start to lay down those neural pathways and use that part of your brain continues to work more effectively and demand more oxygen moving forward.
Okay. So just talking about oxygen, then let's move into breath work a little bit. Like, can you talk at all about how like if somebody's a breath worker and they're doing breath work on a regular basis, if we were to implement a muse into the situation, like how would that be supportive? Like, what could that do for them?
So we actually have a breathwork protocol that's going to be going into the Muse app. Currently, it does have some breathwork exercises on it, and as you use our Muse breath exercises, it's tracking your breath. So we're tracking the up and down rhythms of your heart, as well as the movement of your body as you breathe. And we have different breathing practices like box breathing, etc. And you're able to see if your breath rate is moving along with the guide. So Muse is already rich for breath work, but we have a new set of protocols that we're testing, built by a breathwork practitioner named JJ, and he had been using Muse with his clients as they did breath work, and he noticed reliably as they got into the breath hold, their brainwave activity would drop significantly, would lower in amplitude. And so from that, he approached us and said, "This is amazing. Like, let's do a study with this." And we started to create a whole protocol and a whole practice. I don't know when it's going to be rolling out in the app, but if you get the Muse device, you get all of the different protocols that we create over time automatically updated in the app. So it's both something that you can use immediately with our existing breathwork practices. You can see your brain oxygenation as you do your breathwork practice. You can see your brain waves over time, so you can already see all of those details during practice, which is incredibly cool.
That's very exciting, especially as a practitioner myself. I'm curious to know, is there an optimal time to meditate and muse, or does it not really matter? Because the reason I ask that is I feel like sometimes in the morning I'm a bit fidgety and I need to go and do a workout. And so sometimes the same with breath work. Like sometimes it's not very good to just lay still when your body needs to move. So can you just talk to us about like good and bad times, if there are such a thing as bad times to meditate and muse?
Sure. So the best time to meditate is the time you'll actually do it. So people think like, oh, I'm supposed to do it, wake up at 6 in the morning and then meditate and then I'll reach enlightenment. It's like, if you're not a morning person and that's going to make you miserable, just don't do it. You want to find a time that's going to fit into your daily schedule. Now, it's also a question of what you want to accomplish with it. So when you wake up in the morning and you feel kind of fidgety, um, do you want to just get up and move because that makes you feel great and you want to go to the gym and you can like get that workout and you feel awesome? Or are you waking up feeling kind of fidgety and think, hey, I want to see if I can shift that? And so you can sit there in a meditation practice where at the beginning you might feel fidgety and it might not feel the best. But by minute 3, 4, 5, 7, you start to realize, hey, that energy that I'm feeling, I can actually shift and transform it. And I don't need to follow it into that other place. I can shift and transform it into a place of calm. So um, you don't need to start meditation in the right mood. Meditation will help you shift that mood. And meditation is an incredible tool if you're feeling anxious, you're feeling irritated, you're feeling distressed, to say, okay, I'm going to sit and breathe deeply, even if it feels like not what I want to do right now, because I know by halfway through, I will start to shift state. And I'm sure you find the same with breath work. It's like, I don't know if I feel like I want a session now, but at the end, you feel great. I felt the same way about the run I took this morning. It was cold and miserable out. Um, but I did it. And then halfway through, you feel the transformation. So the best time to meditate is the time you'll actually do it, the time it gets put into your calendar, because it's something you want to be doing regularly. And you can use it at the beginning of the day to set calm for your day. You can use it at the end of the day to wind down and down regulate for sleep. You can use it throughout the day to help shift your mood in little bits here and there to maintain an optimal state. It's a tool to mold as you please.
Cool. What are your thoughts on advantages and disadvantages of eyes open versus eyes closed meditation? Do you have a preference over one of the other, and are there any benefits to doing one over the other?
So, when you do an eyes closed meditation, you drop into relaxation faster. So, there's a phenomenon that happens called the alpha block. As soon as you close your eyes, you reduce the input to your visual cortex. The occipital cortex, your visual cortex, is what generates the strongest alpha waves in your brain. So, when you close your eyes, you immediately get an increase in alpha activity. Alpha is a brain state associated with calm and relaxation. So, if you want to drop into calm, I highly recommend starting with an eyes closed meditation, slowing your breath, If you prefer just observing your breath is good, or if you really want to move towards calm, then slowing your breath, working with your sinusoidal arrhythmia to downregulate your heart rate, um, and deepening your practice by focusing your attention on your breath, releasing your muscles, and deepening into calm. If you want to be doing a consciousness-based meditation where you want to feel a shifted sense of connection to the world, you might be doing the kind of practice where you have your eyes open and you are becoming just aware of the room and aware that there is a room around you and there's space in front of you and you are a being with awareness. And then, over time going through a practice like that, you start to have this moment where you're like, oh my God, I am everything. I am the space around me. The molecules in me are the molecules in the air, the molecules in the universe, and in space. So there's all sorts of different practices that can lead to different effects. Um, if you are someone who's prone to sleepiness, um, and you want to stay awake, I recommend an eyes open practice. Um, and in an eyes open practice, you don't need to be staring at the room around you. You can simply keep, your gaze softly towards the floor, like your eyes half lidded. Um, so different ways that you can play with it and work with it depending on the outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah, no, very cool. And then last question really is a laying down meditation versus a seated meditation. Are there any benefits to either of those, or is it a bit like what we just spoke about with the open, closed eyes?
Exactly what we spoke about. So, laying down meditation may allow you to get deeper into your body. Um, and a laying down meditation is going to invariably make you sleepier. So, if you're using it to fall asleep, obviously you want to be lying down. Um, Typically in meditation, we're not looking to get sleepy, it's the opposite. In meditation, we're looking to sharpen our attention and our awareness and our clarity of thinking. So, to enhance that, you want to be seated in a position where it feels that, how they say, is your body is a mountain. And so you feel this sort of upliftingness, this pride as you're sitting comfortably but upright. And you're able to really just bring your attention into your breath with your breath expanding as you sit. You don't have to be sitting cross legged. You don't have to be in any uncomfortable position. You can just sit on a chair comfortably with your feet wherever they want to fall. So don't feel like you need to do gymnastics. You just want to find a position that's going to allow you to maintain alertness, and clarity while you go inside.
Okay, very cool. Thank you so much for walking us through all of this. You've kind of got me excited again about the thought of doing some meditation. So thank you for sharing. So we're going to pop the link below so people can head on over and grab one of your muses. And then we've got a TADB code that they can get. So they can get, I think, a little something extra as well. Is there anything we've not covered, Ariel, that you'd like to cover before we close off, or any parting words you'd like to leave with the audience?
Yeah, my parting words are we are all amazing, capable, phenomenal creatures. And sometimes the thoughts in our head tell us that we're not. And there's a way to fix that. So you can use tools and technologies and methodologies to shift your thinking so you're no longer at the behest of those annoying thoughts that keep dragging you down. So I encourage everyone to embrace their wonderfulness. Even if you hear this and it's like, I'm not wonderful, it's like somewhere in there you really are. Just move the voices out of the way and enjoy living your life.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you. I think we spend so much time working on the physical things, and of course it's important, like, diet and exercise and all these things. And yet there's that stuff that's between our ears that's just chatting at us 24/7. And I often say it's like a terrible roommate that's just giving, you wouldn't speak to your friends or your family the way that your brain speaks to you sometimes, or your thoughts speak to you. So I think this is really important for people to listen to this conversation and know that there are things that you can do, and there's science-based ways of changing that. So thank you so much for everything you've done. This has been very enlightening. And please, everybody, have a look at the website and the links below. And Oriel, we must do this again at some point in the future. So thank you for your time.
Oh, my joy and pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for sticking all the way through to the end of the podcast. I want to just honor you for doing that. There's a million things you could be doing right now and you're here, so thank you. So a couple of bits. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed Ariel. How amazing is she? And hopefully it's moistened your beak when it comes to the idea of getting a Muse. I used my first Muse about 7 years ago. So the link is down below. It's choosemuse/TADB. A little text will come up here. And you can go and get a 15% discount code. So I would implore you to go and have a look at that website. And you can blend it with your breathwork practice, or you can do it separate. That's what's beautiful about meditation. One other thing, if you've learned something today, do me and every other viewer here the honor and the privilege of just leaving us a little comment. What did you learn? What did you like? What did you enjoy about this podcast? If you go and put that in the YouTube comments, it not only will help embed it into your own mind, so you're more likely to remember it, which is really cool. But it also means that somebody else will get the benefit of doing it. So we're kind of paying it forward by taking 2 ticks to do that, and then give us a little thumbs up. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you again for being here all the way through to the end. I really appreciate you. Check out the website choosemuse/TADB to go and get your discount code and pick up your own Muse, and leave us a comment, and I'll see you on another video very soon. Thanks so much. Cheers.